How out of place I looked in this luxurious establishment. I was well aware that my small entourage and I were quickly becoming the center of attention as we made our way between tables occupied by rather wealthy patrons. In fact, I almost ran away, and not because the police could show up at any moment. I knew their attention would be elsewhere, but I really wanted to sit down at a table before they noticed I was even in the restaurant. Luckily for me, the waiter brought another bottle of champagne and stood in such a way that he blocked my view. When the waiter moved away from the table, I deftly took his place, and the patrons, sensing a change, looked at me in surprise. No, not surprise. More shock, I would say. In fact, Jenny looked more confused. But her boss, Herbert Henderson, experienced fear, perhaps? After all, the husband of the woman with whom he had planned to spend the evening was suddenly towering over him. Perhaps before I continue, I should explain that my small, at least in number, entourage was not there to assist me in my business that evening. They were there solely to ensure that no one interfered. My victim was in the hotel restaurant and, theoretically, surrounded by his colleagues and/or so-called friends. I had no idea which of them might come to his aid, so I didn't take any chances. I leaned over, picked up Henderson's full glass of champagne from the table, and raised it as if offering a toast. "To this asshole and the stupid married bitch he was going to sleep with tonight," I said as loudly as I could without shouting. There was no need to shout because my appearance in the large hall, and, as I said, my impressive entourage, had silenced the entire establishment. Not even the clinking of spoons against cups or the tapping of knives and forks against plates could be heard. And of course all eyes were on us, or rather, on me. I didn't drink Henderson's champagne, but slowly poured it over his head. He jumped to his feet. You would have thought he was about to pounce on me, but I didn't give him a chance. I'm left-handed, and to be honest, I don't think Henderson realized I was going to hit him when my fist crushed his jaw. But damn, I knew exactly when my fist hit its target. Damn, I think I felt the bones in my hand break, but I was sure the crack I heard was the sound of Henderson's jaw breaking. This fact was later kindly confirmed to me by the police officer who eventually charged me. But life is always full of ups and downs, isn't it? My wife's face was full of amazement, but when she saw her boss collapse on the floor in a terrible state, she quickly came to her senses. "You bastard, you hit him!" Jenny said, jumping up from her seat. "Yes, I did, didn't I?" I smiled back at her. "What did you think I was going to do, kiss that bastard?" "No, honey, that's your job, remember?" "But why?" she asked. "Because he was going to sleep with my wife tonight, that's why, and I don't like being cuckolded. God, I hate that word, not to mention that someone could use it to describe me." "Are you out of your mind? We just stopped in for dinner after practice, that's all. There's nothing going on between me and Herbert. We were celebrating a successful day, and then Herbert was going to drive me home." "Oh, so you weren't going to sleep with him tonight?" "No, damn it, I wasn't." "What about the message you sent saying you'd be late?" "God, Pete. The seminar went so well that it ran late, and then we got into a discussion." "At the bar?" I interrupted. "Yes, at the bar. The manager of our northern office wants me to go there and organize a seminar for them. Herbert had to finish up a few things with a couple of our colleagues before he would agree to let me go to the northern office for a couple of weeks, so we continued our discussion at the bar." "Continued?" "Okay, it was long, but it was just work. Anyway, we ended up staying longer than I expected, so I sent you a message so you wouldn't worry." The entire time we were talking, Henderson was lying on the floor. He wasn't unconscious. I was sure of that. I'm certain he was pretending to be dead. I found it very strange that none of his friends or colleagues rushed to give Henderson first aid, let alone physical support. Everyone just sat there listening to Jenny and me. Of course, you have to remember that I was with my friends, and they weren't chosen because they looked harmless. Perhaps people decided that it was wiser not to get involved at that moment. "So old Herbert was going to drive you home after dinner?" "Yes." And then what was he going to do, come back here to spend the night? Don't be silly, he was going home to his wife. Why would Herbert come back here? I don't know, dear, but I assume that was his intention. Otherwise, why would he sneak out of the bar and book a room for the night? While you were sitting there drinking those big vodka Bloody Marys he was pouring you, by the way. Are you saying that Herbert slipped something into my drinks tonight? Of course, baby, and not just anyone, but that bastard who's lying there and booked the room earlier. How do you know that? I have friends in low places, Jenny. Excuse me? Employees of this hotel, woman. If you'd bothered to look at them properly, you'd have noticed that some of them are members of the rugby club. But you've always looked down on this place, haven't you? You only come here with me a couple of times a year, and that's only because I insist. At that moment, the hotel manager finally plucked up the courage to approach me. Perhaps he decided that the incident was dragging on, or maybe he realized that the police had been called. Mr. Greenway, I must ask you to leave the hotel. Of course, Doug, I replied. Sorry for the trouble and the mess. Then I turned and nodded to the guys to start backing off. Although none of Henderson's friends had intervened, there was a chance that one of them might decide to take advantage of my departure. So we had planned a coordinated retreat in advance. I had only taken a couple of steps when Jenny called out to me, "Wait a minute!" I turned just in time to see my wife dig the sharp heel of her shoe into Henderson's rear end. "Consider yourself fired!" she shouted, then limped over to me and grabbed my arm. "Let's get out of here." "Are you okay? You're limping," I asked when we reached the door. "Damn high heels. They're uncomfortable to walk in, and when you need to kick someone, they're useless. I should have borrowed your boots before I kicked that bastard, but they look so good on your feet." "I hope so. I wouldn't want to go through that pain for nothing. How's your hand?" I must have flinched because Jenny ran her hand over mine to take my arm. "I think I broke something." "Poor thing, why didn't you hit him with the champagne bottle? I would have if he'd come at me." "If you only knew what happened, Jenny. He secretly poured you a few shots of vodka, you know." "Damn, big shots?" "Yeah, triple shots, I think." Damn, another half hour and I would have passed out. You know how vodka affects me. Yes, and apparently Henderson knows too. Damn, it must have been at last Christmas party. There was vodka in that damn punch they served. It hit me like a brick. As if I didn't know. We were dancing when you fell down. I had to drag you to the car, remember? And make up all those damn excuses for those stuck-up jerks you work with. That bastard probably figured it out. Did he get a good number? No, just the regular one. Stingy bastard! Hey, I thought I was the bastard today. Well, you are a bastard, but in your case, it's an accident that everyone knows about. Henderson had to work hard to get where he is. That's probably why no one came to his aid today. He's not very popular in the office, you know? I never liked that bastard, you know that. And you also know that I didn't approve of your working for him. Well, now I don't approve either, and my leg hurts to prove it, giggled Jenny, who was clearly starting to feel the effects of the vodka. When we left the building, a police car was pulling up to the scene. But the two officers, surrounded by a noisy crowd of apparently drunk rugby club players and their female companions, who distracted me, didn't have time to enter the hotel and find out what had happened before I put Jenny in our car and drove away quickly. I figured I had about an hour before the police arrived to arrest me to get Jenny home and put her to bed. Hey, I'm a realist. I knew how this was going to end. And in the short time I had to prepare, I did everything I needed to do. Jenny was still mumbling incoherent words when she collapsed in the car. Only her seatbelt kept her in a sitting position that could be mistaken for standing. As I carried Jenny into the house and into our room, I realized that I would have to go to the hospital myself later. The numb pain in my left arm turned into agony as I dragged Jenny upstairs, laid her on our bed, and made her as comfortable as possible. I knew from experience that she would be unconscious until at least lunchtime the next day and then wake up with a terrible hangover. Strangely enough, I was looking forward to the police arriving and arresting me. Jenny with a hangover is not the best person in the world. I knew this from previous experience. We had been married for 7 years by then. About half an hour later, 2 police officers knocked on the door and said I had to go with them to the police station to help them investigate an incident that had occurred earlier that evening at the Royal Grand Hotel. I invited them in and led them to the bedroom, where I pointed to my wife lying unconscious on the bed. "I'm sorry, guys, but I can't leave her like this. Anything could happen to her. I'll go to the station myself tomorrow morning when she wakes up, although I suspect it will be closer to noon." "What happened? Did she drink more than she could handle?" "No, some bastard slipped something into her drink. My wife can hold her liquor, sometimes too well, but for some reason her body can't handle vodka." "So you're saying someone decided to take revenge tonight?" "You could say that, officer. But I'm not going to name the person yet because I never liked the bastard who got beaten up." "I'm sorry, sir, but we still have to arrest you. It looks like someone's jaw was broken tonight." "So is my hand. Look." By that time, my hand had swollen to almost twice its normal size. "To hell with the police. We'd better take you to the hospital to get that looked at," said one of the policemen. "I'm sorry, guys, but I can't leave Jenny in this condition, at least not until the cavalry arrives to take care of her. To be honest, I didn't expect you to arrive any sooner than an hour. How did you find me so quickly?" "The cameras on Main Street caught your license plate number as you were leaving. You shouldn't have parked at the bus stop. If you hadn't, they probably wouldn't have paid any attention to you or your car." I was about to say, "You can't guess everything," when 4 guys from the rugby club, along with their girlfriends, entered, or rather, burst through the front door. The girls rushed upstairs to see how Jenny was doing. 3 of the guys headed for the living room, opening some cans. The 4th guy, who looked very unsteady on his feet, stopped at the foot of the stairs and shouted, "Not a word, my friend." I think he was too drunk to climb the stairs on his own. Freed from my lady duties, I waved the 2 policemen ahead, and we went downstairs, where we were met by my slightly unsteady friend from the club. I'm afraid the guys had already started the party before I got the urgent call from one of the hotel staff. And it all began. "We'd better take you to the hospital to have your hand checked out," suggested one of the policemen. "You're not going anywhere without me," said my somewhat drunk but still quite sane friend. "Who are you?" the police officers asked. "I'm a legal advisor and representative for Mr. Greenway," replied the clearly intoxicated man. "We haven't arrested him yet," replied another police officer. "Besides, you look like you've been out on the town tonight." "More than I should have, officer," he replied, adding by way of explanation, "Little Lady Billy gave birth to his twins tonight." Although I highly doubted that the police officers knew who Billy was, unless they were fans of the local amateur rugby club. "Besides, I just have to make sure that stupid idiot doesn't say anything on tape. Our Pete is too honest for his own good." The 2 policemen looked at each other for a few seconds. Then one of them said, "Listen, Peter, if we take you to the hospital to have your arm checked out, will you come to the station in the morning?" "I told you I would, didn't I, officer?" "All right, let's do that. I don't see any point in questioning you about what happened tonight, especially considering that your lawyer won't let you say anything because he—" The police officer didn't finish his sentence, but simply added, "Let's go," and led him to the patrol car. I was indeed charged. At first it was assault, but then it was dropped and replaced with battery. However, in the end, during the trial, that charge was also dropped due to conflicting witness statements. Although everyone agreed that Henderson did indeed have a broken jaw and was covered in champagne from the glass I had been holding in my hand moments before, there were conflicting accounts of how it happened. Several of Henderson's friends claimed that I poured champagne on his head and then hit him. Meanwhile, the vast majority of witnesses stated that when I approached the table, Henderson attempted to headbutt me as he stood up, spilling the glass of champagne I was holding over him. They also claimed that my punch appeared to be more of an instinctive defensive reaction on my part than a planned physical attack on Henderson. Yes, and by some convenient coincidence, all the security cameras in the restaurant that evening were apparently not working. Or at least, no recordings were found. But I suspect you won't be surprised to hear that. Although Jenny quit, we heard that Henderson was fired. Fired, in our language. These days, no company wants to risk a sexual harassment case. Her former employers were extremely generous to Jenny, paying her severance pay. Yes, severance pay, that's news to me too, but I don't move in those circles. Jenny found another job very quickly. Would you believe it, at the Royal Grand Hotel? Jenny had worked with the hotel management many times, organizing seminars for her employer. They were looking for someone to coordinate event room bookings, liaise with clients about these events, and even help clients with their planning. Jenny's experience was perfect for the job. And yes, she does give our rugby club a discount when we host big parties there. Jenny doesn't mind dropping by the club sometimes. Some of the guys even work for her. However, she still refuses to watch me on the field because she's always afraid I'll get injured. Life goes on. It was a joke. It was always a joke. A damn joke. All 17 years we were together, including 15 years of marriage, it was a joke. Hell, many of our friends knew it was a joke. You know, one day I'm going to pick one of those guys up off the dance floor and take him home, Tracy would say to me in the evenings when we went dancing. I hated dancing. She knew that. All our friends knew that. And yet, at least once a month, our group of 8 to 10 people would get together at a dance club. I would go out on the dance floor for 2 dances and then return to our table. Then my wife would spend most of the rest of the evening on the dance floor with 4 other guys from our group, other women, and yes, with my approval, other men outside our group. As long as the other men treated her with respect and no one guy dominated her dance card, I had no problem with her dancing with other men. Although, it seemed to me that she had become more outgoing lately. She seemed to allow her partners to be a little more hands-on, and I thought she was teasing me by dancing a little closer to her partners. I mentioned this several times over the course of a few months, but she and her friends just grinned at me as if it were some kind of game. You know, one day I'm going to pick one of those guys off the dance floor and take him home, she would repeat, sometimes winking at me while I shook my head in exasperation. Sometimes she drove me crazy with this shit, but I trusted Tracy completely. She was my other half, my wife, my lover, my soulmate, the mother of my 2 children. At 39, she's still stunning and definitely knows how to flirt. But ultimately, before we exchanged vows, we agreed to be faithful to each other. So far, she hasn't done that. Dinner at Mario's was delicious, as usual. All 5 couples were there. We skipped dessert and headed to Givenchy, a rather expensive dance club that catered to a crowd of 30 to 50 people. We had been there several times in the past and always had a good time. We sat down at a large round table in the corner of the club and ordered drinks. The conversation continued for a while until around 9 p.m. when live music started playing. At that moment, all the women in our group stood up together, which meant that we guys had to get up and follow them onto the dance floor. As usual, I stumbled through 2 dances. I have to admit, Tracy looked stunning in her short club dress with a plunging neckline as she bounced around the dance floor. I knew I was in luck. When the second song ended, Bob, one of the guys in our group, took a few steps toward where Tracy and I were dancing and nudged me in the shoulder, basically demanding that I give up my spot in front of my wife. We both laughed as the next song started, and I turned back to our table. It was a fairly typical evening, with all the women getting up from their tables to dance with different people, sometimes including their husbands, throughout the evening. The women didn't always return to their tables before starting to dance with a new partner. which wasn't unusual, but what was unusual was that my wife didn't return for at least half an hour, and at first glance I couldn't find her in the crowded room. In the 5 or so years that we had been meeting as a group, there had only been a few occasions when an overly zealous patron needed to be informed that he was overstepping the bounds of what was acceptable with one of our women. Usually the woman's husband would do the counseling, although we were all usually on the lookout in case someone got out of hand. Dave Allen was the only guy at our table, so I leaned over to him and said I needed to find Tracy. I shook my head when he asked if I wanted to take a walk. I found my wife and her dance partner within 5 minutes because I headed straight for the far end of the dance floor, away from our table. A slow song was playing, and they were both pressed against each other, like a couple in love. I had never seen my wife dance so close to another man before, and my immediate reaction was anger, which was probably not the smartest thing to do, considering that this guy looked like a Scandinavian god. He must have been 6 feet 3 inches, a 265-pound blonde sculpture pretending to be a human being. Without thinking, I walked right up to the couple and grabbed him by the arm, telling him to let go of my wife. He reacted just as quickly, pushing his body hard into the couple next to me. I bounced off the guy standing next to me and was knocked to the ground by a huge white fist to the face. 2 minutes later, we were surrounded by other people, bouncers, and the manager. Someone pressed a towel with ice to my swollen, painful left cheek. "That big bastard was groping my wife," I muttered to the manager when he asked me what had happened. "I don't care if that guy is soccer star Erling Haaland on steroids. That shouldn't happen." Manager Eric knew our band because we sometimes hung out there. I could tell he was upset about the incident and offered to buy drinks for our table. I thanked him, but declined his offer to buy drinks for Tracy and me because we were going home to discuss what I was sure would be a very deep conversation. I returned to our table and said goodnight to our friends, who looked shaken. I nodded to Tracy, pointed to the door, and followed her outside. I waited until we were driving home before I started the conversation with my wife. "What the hell is this all about, Tracy?" I shouted. "You two were practically having sex on the dance floor. He had his hand right on your ass. Would you have slept with him in the bathroom if I had come in 5 minutes later? I always told you that one day I'd take one of these guys home because you wouldn't dance with me," she said in a tone that I took as serious. "It's always been a joke, Tracy. Everyone knows it's just a joke. You know very well that I would never let you do that," I growled. "What if I finally decide I don't want it to be a joke anymore? What if I finally decide I want it to be real?" she asked. That was one way to shut me up. I wasn't expecting that. We drove home in complete silence. Our children, who were sitting watching movies while we were out, were surprised to see us come in the door at almost midnight, neither of us looking like we had enjoyed our evening. They got the hint, said goodnight, and went to their rooms, asking me where I got the bruise on my face. Needless to say, I didn't answer the question about the bruise. 20 minutes later, we were both dressed in our casual clothes and sitting in our shared room, the furthest room from the children's rooms upstairs. "What's going on in your head, Tracy? Where did that come from tonight?" I asked quietly. She clasped her hands and pursed her lips. She looked to the left, then to the right, but never once looked directly at me. "Josh, do you remember that I'll be 40 in a few months? I'm not getting any younger, and I know that very soon everything will go wrong. Right now, I can still turn on almost any man just by smiling at him. I just want to take advantage of my amazing power one more time before I get old. You know, I haven't had sex with anyone since we started dating. It would be nothing more than physical attraction, pure lust, without love and without emotional connection." I suddenly realized that my genitals hurt, as if someone had kicked me. "So you would have taken that big boy home with you or gone to his place if I hadn't stopped you?" I asked hesitantly. She blushed instantly. "That big boy? He really is a big boy," she said. "If I'm going to do something, don't you think I should take that into account? We weren't virgins when we started dating. Why should it be any different now?" Finally, a light bulb went off in my head. You're seriously going to do this? Shit, I said, a little louder than a whisper. That's what I've been trying to tell you, baby. I want this. But we're married. You can't just have fun with another man, I said bluntly. She looked at me like I was a dim-witted child. She could have said that I was having trouble understanding what she was trying to tell me. Yes, I can, she said confidently. With or without your permission. But honestly, I think we'd both be better off if you gave me permission. But we made vows to each other. We talked about what fidelity meant to both of us, I said. This is our marriage, baby. We can change the rules if we want to, she said. But I don't want to change the rules. You're changing the rules, I whined. I was shocked and saddened by the turn of events that night. I never thought this would happen. What the hell is going on, I wanted to know. I got up from my chair and staggered up the stairs to bed. If she wanted to change the rules of our marriage, she could have stayed a few more minutes to lock up the house for the night. Like many men, I tried to deal with my marital problem by pretending it didn't exist. It worked until the following Tuesday evening, when Tracy and I were alone in the living room after the kids had gone to bed. So, do you want to do something with the kids on Friday night? Or should I send them to their mom and dad for the weekend? You know my parents still love having them over, and I'm sure it would make things a lot easier for you, Tracy said. So you're seriously going to sleep with another man? I croaked, unable to get my voice up to full volume. How could you do this to me? I thought you loved me. The fact that you're cheating on me with another man definitely doesn't tell me you love me. I do love you, and you know that, she practically snapped back. The cuckold thing adds a little excitement, but that's not the point. It's about me getting what I need, which is separate from us. If you don't let it affect you, it won't have much impact on us. No one else needs to know what's going on in our marriage. No one else should know? You weren't exactly being discreet on Friday night. How many people know about your plans? She looked guilty for the first time since she had brought it up a few days ago. Okay. I got carried away at the club the other night. I'm sorry about that. But this was meant to happen, Josh, and it won't change our marriage. I don't agree with you, Tracy. I don't want this to happen. I don't want to share you with anyone, but you seem determined to do something I don't want you to do. What if I can't handle it and decide to divorce you? I said. Shock registered on her face. You would divorce me? She stammered, suddenly losing her confidence. But we love each other. In the end, it won't matter. Maybe it won't matter to you in the long run, but it will matter to me every day, I replied. I'll think about not being good enough for you. I'll think about you having sex with another man every day, especially every time I think about making love to you. I'll wonder if he was better. I'll wonder if you're thinking about me or him when we make love. We made vows to each other. I took them seriously. A few days ago, I thought you did too, I said. Yes, I agree, she said. Just try to see it from my point of view. How about you try to see it from my point of view, since I'm not the type to cheat? I love you, and I can't do that. You know I'm telling the truth. You can make me look like a fool, but I'm not going to do it willingly. I guess if you don't love me enough to not do this, then I don't love you enough to not file for divorce. So I don't want to hear any whining when I do exactly what I said I would do. This is your fault, I said. So? I guess you're going to be with that big bastard from the club? I asked, already knowing the answer but wanting her to say it out loud. She blushed slightly and turned away from me before clearing her throat. Yes, she whispered. So you plan not only to cheat on me, but to do it with the guy who punched me for telling him to take his hands off my wife in public. Consider yourself divorced. I heard her growl as she got up and headed up the stairs to our bedroom. The plan for Friday night was for Tracy to take the kids to her parents' house and then come back home to get dressed for her date. I was going to order pizza for myself, and I had cold beer in the fridge. Obviously, I hadn't been able to convince her to change her mind about the date. There's nothing more devastating than coming home after a hard day at work and hearing your wife happily humming as she gets ready for a date with another man. Damn. I didn't bother saying hello. I put the pizza box on the stove, took out 3 slices, grabbed a cold Corona Light, and headed for my chair. I was just finishing my 3rd slice of pizza and my 1st glass of beer when Tracy came down the stairs looking absolutely stunning in a short, tight-fitting blue dress I'd never seen before. The fact that she had bought a new dress for another man made me even angrier than I already was. "Don't you dare parade around in front of me, Tracy. I'll rip that rag off you," I growled at my wife, who quickly stopped smiling. She tried to make small talk while I wolfed down 3 more slices and washed them down with beer. I know she was fishing for a compliment about how she looked. Frustrated, she finally asked, "Do you really think I care how you dress for another man?" I asked. "You're killing me. And no, I'm not going to tell you to enjoy your evening. If anything, I hope your date falls and breaks his leg." "You know, you still have time to change your mind and stay here with me." She grimaced, as if what I had suggested was painful for her. "Stop it, Josh. It won't hurt us. Trust me," she said. "It already has, baby. I'm really going to miss you when we get divorced." She rolled her eyes, then leaned toward me, as if expecting me to hug her before I left. It was my turn to roll my eyes. I never in my life expected to be sitting at home on a Friday night while my wife was actually on a date with another man. Never. The longer I sat there pretending to watch TV, the angrier I got. I got out my computer and started doing all the financial transactions that people getting divorced do. For example, dividing finances, paying off credit cards, and closing accounts. Tracy quietly entered the door a few minutes after 12:30 a.m., looking even more exhausted after her 5-hour absence. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup was smudged, her dress was wrinkled, her face was flushed. And yet, it was her glowing. Damn. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of asking her how her evening had been. But I didn't need to ask, as it would have been obvious even to a blind man. Damn again. "So you waited up for me, Daddy?" she joked as she entered the living room, where I was comfortably settled in my armchair. "Not exactly. I had something to do on the computer, and then I started watching Rollerball. You know I love that movie," I said. "Yes, I know," she replied. "I'm a little tired. How about we go upstairs, and I can show you that tonight wasn't such a bad night after all." Ugh. I know I cringed involuntarily. No thanks, babe. I'd never be desperate enough to take away someone's extra seconds," I declared. She got that. She tried to pierce me with her gaze. "Go away, Joshua." On Saturday, when the kids were away for the weekend with her parents, we were alone, and I could tell she really wanted to talk. Call me petty, but every time she sat close enough to me to talk, I got up and went somewhere else. After I did that for the 4th time, she got the hint and actually asked if we could talk. "What is there to talk about, Tracy? I assume you cheated on me, and the whole evening was probably the best sex of your life. Is that it?" I asked. I must have been on edge because she flushed bright red and just moved her lips silently for about a minute. "But it doesn't have to ruin us, Joshua. I still love you just as much as I did before last night," she said. "Well, at least that makes us even," I said. "Your relationship with me has been rapidly declining since the moment you walked out the door last night." "Look at me, Joshua. Look at me. Really look at me," she ordered. "Have I changed since last night? If you didn't know I'd been seeing another man, you wouldn't be able to tell. Nothing has changed for me. Physically, maybe, but a lot has changed mentally and emotionally," I interjected. "You crossed the line in our marriage to have sex with another man. By your own admission, a bigger man, who apparently also got better." You forgot about our 15 years of marital commitment for one night of passion. You literally showed me that your passion, your desire, was more important to you than your commitment to me. And yet you say you haven't changed. You lay with him after that, feeling your soul connected to his. Did you think about me, lonely and devoted? Or was your brain just consumed by him? Sometimes what is left unsaid speaks louder than words. She exhaled in disgust. You'd rather destroy our family than deal with this? I always thought you were a better person than that, Tracy said. You're no longer in a position to judge what makes a good man. Or a good woman, for that matter, Tracy. You gave up that role last night when you made me unfit to be your other half. I didn't make you unfit. It wasn't love. It was just a chance to indulge in unbridled lust before I got too old. You have to understand that this won't affect us in any way. Unless you let it, she said. I don't think I can ever trust you again, I said. Whenever you're running errands, whenever you have to be with the girls, hell, if you're 10 minutes late home from work, my first thought will be to wonder if you're having sex with your big guy, or with someone else for that matter, for some new reason you just made up. I trusted you completely, but now that you've shown me that you don't deserve my trust unconditionally... When did you turn into such an old paranoid? She spat at me. I think my watch said it was 7:03 p.m. when you left the house last night, I parried. There was no trace of humor in my voice. On Sunday afternoon, we picked up the kids together. We didn't say anything in front of the relatives, but I could tell by my mother-in-law's expression that she suspected something. After all, this woman is half sleuth, half pit bull. I watched as she took Tracy by the hand and led her upstairs to the master bedroom, I assumed. They were gone for about 10 minutes, and when they came back, Tracy looked like her mother had given her a good talking to. Thank God the kids chatted all the way home, otherwise it would have been a quiet ride. Either Tracy's conversation with her mother made her think, or she finally came back to reality. But as soon as the kids were in bed, Tracy told me how we were going to try to save our marriage. I love you, Josh. There has to be some way to get your trust back, she said. I know you're angry right now, but in a few days when you've calmed down and thought about it, you'll realize that this doesn't have to affect our future together. We discussed this before you left. I warned you then that there was no turning back, I said. I screwed up, Josh. I made a huge mistake. Surely you can forgive me for one mistake. Please forgive me, she cried. It wasn't a mistake, Tracy. You did what you wanted to do, even though I explained why I didn't think you should. I told you the consequences. Some things you can't fix by saying you're sorry. Since Tracy hadn't been particularly tactful at the dance club a week earlier, I saw no reason to be any more tactful when she was served at the office on Tuesday. I didn't need to turn around to see who was calling when my cell phone rang 5 minutes after I received notification that the papers had been delivered to her. Hi, Tracy, I answered casually, picking up the phone. Was it necessary to have me served at my office? She sniffed. It would have been nice to show a little discretion. What about what you showed me at the club a week ago? Be realistic, Tracy. You reap what you sow, I said. Apparently, I learned that in Clichés for Us. That evening, I was going to tell the kids about the divorce, but a tearful Tracy talked me out of it. We discussed when to tell the kids what was going on. In fact, she wanted me not to tell the kids at all, believing she could talk me out of the divorce and, therefore, the kids didn't need to know. That strategy went out the window 2 days later when the kids came home from school angry at Tracy and me for not telling them about the divorce. Apparently, middle school is not the best place to keep secrets. How did we find out about the divorce last? God, it was so awkward, our daughter Kate said when we gathered around the kitchen table for a family discussion. I tried to burn a hole in my wife with my gaze. I hadn't told anyone about it except my lawyer. Tracy, on the other hand, told all the wives in our group of 5 couples. I suppose it was kind of natural because they were all with us the night it all fell apart. All the other couples had children, so it was no surprise to me that word of my divorce spread throughout the school. I'm sorry, guys. I think this is my fault, Tracy said hesitantly. I asked Dad not to tell you too. I didn't think our friends' kids would blab about it before we had a chance to talk about it as a family. I'm still trying to get your father to stop this nonsense. What nonsense are we talking about? Asked our son, Brian. Obviously, one of you cheated on the other. So which one of you is the slut? Kate struggled to suppress a smile, while Tracy sat at the table studying the texture of the wood. I think I should have told the truth. I could see that Tracy was uncomfortable hearing the truth, but she couldn't say much under the stern gaze of our children. You cheated on Dad? With another man? Because you didn't want to feel old? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You're no better than Marcy, the school slut, Kate said to her mother. I'm not a slut. It was just once, Tracy cried. You told me that once was enough to make you a slut. Remember that? Kate asked, steam practically coming out of her ears. Tracy's face turned red, but she held her tongue. It's not every day your 13-year-old daughter calls you a slut. And she's right. Can Kate and I live with you, Dad? Brian asked. After talking to my lawyer, I had already come to terms with the fact that the children would be given to Tracy. I didn't want to break up the family, but now that the children had expressed their desire to stay with me, it changed my mind. If that's what you two want, I don't see why not, I replied when Tracy looked up from the table. Would you have done that to me? She asked. Since the children would be 14 and 13 by the time the divorce was finalized, the judge did listen to their requests, and I not only got the kids first, but also kept the house until Brian left for college. If I really wanted to date women, being the primary guardian would have slowed down my personal life considerably, but I wasn't in a hurry to start a new relationship. I would have bet everything that Tracy and I would have made it work, and I would have lost my mind. I was going to enjoy being a single dad for a while and slowly, really slowly, get back into dating. However, this strategy conflicted with my daughter's ideas. She kept pushing me to date, and often. I realized something was wrong when she tried to set me up with Marcy, the divorced mother of a prostitute. What's the rush, Kate? What am I missing? I asked. Mom has a big, handsome guy and you don't have anyone. It makes you look pathetic, Dad. I don't want anyone to think you're pathetic, she blurted out. I couldn't help but laugh at the concern of a 14-year-old girl. However, I found it interesting that she seemed to know that Tracy had started dating her boyfriend again. From time to time, I dated a few women to make Kate happy, if only for something else. I hadn't met Marcy's mother, but I had learned that she was a nice woman whose abusive husband had left her several years ago. It seemed that Marcy hadn't picked up her mother's behavior toward boys. That was useful to know, just in case. The kids were spending the weekend with their mother, so on Friday evening I decided to stop by my favorite little bar for a bite to eat and a couple of drinks to relax after the work week. I was sipping my neat Woodford Reserve bourbon, waiting for my food to arrive, when she walked in, looking around like a lithe cat in the jungle, searching for a weakened animal to be her next prey. Her bright blue eyes scanned the entire bar before she headed toward me. Her large breasts swayed beautifully under the silk of her blue blouse. I know I took a deep breath when she sat down in the seat next to me, inhaling the scent of her exquisite perfume. God, I wanted so badly to say something clever, but instead I just looked away and focused on my bourbon. Wow! You really don't know how to flirt, do you? She asked quietly, sitting down and gracefully crossing her legs in her tight pencil skirt that reached mid-thigh. I confirmed this with my brilliant response. At least I was proud of myself for not drooling on the bar. What are we drinking tonight? She asked me when the bartender approached. I had enough presence of mind to squeeze out a response and ask the bartender to pay my tab. She thanked me and glanced furtively at my left arm. I noticed that her left arm was as bare as mine. Well-dressed, handsome, fit, and lonely. You're a single dad spending the weekend alone, aren't you? That's why you don't have any good lines, right? Yes, I croaked. Guilty on all counts. We spent the next 10 minutes discussing the ups and downs of my marriage. Well, mostly I talked and she mostly listened and then commented. I was amazed at how quickly she figured out my situation. Are you a traveling psychologist or a marriage counselor? I asked. Almost. I'm an interior designer, she said, and giggled. I raised an eyebrow. She giggled again before explaining. You told me you got your house in the divorce. I bet your ex-wife decorated every room in the house except your basement rec room, if you have one, and all you said was, "Yes, dear." I also bet she picked out at least one of your cars, maybe both. Whenever you guys had a disagreement about anything, you gave her the deciding vote, right? I nodded silently, chewing my steak. That's why she thought you'd let her go out with the guy once. You two discussed it to death. You told her you wouldn't put up with it. But every time you said no, she said yes. So you guys were at a stalemate, which in her mind meant she had the deciding vote. Yeah, I never looked at it that way, but in hindsight, it makes perfect sense. It wasn't just a selfish request. She saw it as a done deal. It had to happen, no matter what. I thought we were equal partners, but I didn't realize she was the more equal partner. By this point, I had already treated Jade Taylor to dinner, and we were about to order dessert. Although it wasn't a date, it was still the best date I'd had since my divorce 2 years ago. She smiled radiantly when I told her this, and accepted my offer of a real date the following Friday night. Jade was a force of nature, and she wouldn't accept anything less than the best of me when we were together. She constantly told me that she wanted to be half of our relationship, not 30 or 40%. When I tried to slip away and let her make a unilateral decision, she would stop what we were doing and give me a killer look. It didn't work out too well for you last time with that attitude. Now, I know I'm a better partner than your previous one, but you always have to stand up for yourself. Challenge me, and I promise you that we'll be great together, she explained. We were fantastic together. Whether we were on a date, just hanging out at my place, or in bed. We never, ever had mediocre sex. Yes, sometimes we made love tenderly, but it was never mediocre. There was an absolute connection between us. Then, when we were just fooling around, rough and animalistic, it was, Katie, close the door. When we first started dating, I held back a little, but she quickly disabused me of that notion by yelling at me to give her everything you've got. Never, ever. Stay close to me, Joshua. I never made that mistake again. As I expected, my children were incredibly impressed with Jade when I introduced them to each other. I know I grew in my daughter's eyes. Wow, Dad. Where did you find her? She's gorgeous, smart, funny, and charming. I didn't know you had it in you, Kate said, blushing when she realized she had said it out loud. I'm sorry, Dad, it's just, she's wonderful. But isn't she too young for you? I knew that sooner or later the age issue would come up, and we would have to deal with it head on, just like we had dealt with everything else. I was 44, and Jade was 28. She was in her prime, and I knew that sooner or later she would want to start a family. I had raised my own, and even though she made me feel 10 years younger, I knew I didn't want to start a second family when I was over 60. Jade must have been thinking about it, too. You know, we need to talk, Josh, she said one Saturday night after we'd been in bed for a while. I've been watching you watch me, she said. We're at that stage right now. You're thinking about proposing to me, but it bothers you because you know I want to have children someday. I've been asking myself the same question, Joshua. You know I love you, but I really want to have a family of my own someday. And you've been honest with me about not wanting any more children. They say time solves everything, but in our case, it just sucks. I pulled her close and kissed her passionately. I knew I would never meet another woman like Jade. A few months later, on a Friday evening when she and Brian were visiting her mother, Kate called me. I was surprised when I looked at the caller ID because none of the children usually called when they were with Tracy. "How's it going, sweetie? Did any of you forget anything I needed to give you?" I asked. Dad, could you pick up Brian and me at the Methodist hospital?" she asked. "I'm pretty sure Mom won't want us around this weekend." "Yes, I can pick you up. What's going on?" I asked. We were having dinner when someone rang the doorbell. We heard some screaming when Mom opened the door, and when we got there, Mom was lying on the floor with her mouth bloody, and some woman was standing over her, screaming. From what the stranger told us, it seems that Mom's big, handsome boyfriend was cheating on her with Mom, so she hit Mom in the face. Mom's lip is cut, and the woman knocked out her front tooth. They're calling a dental surgeon to put her tooth back in. "Ah, you're making fun of me. This is gross. This is just awful," I growled into the phone. "I'm sorry for ruining your mood, Dad," Kate began. "It's not your fault your mom's a slut, Kate. Just remember not to make the same mistakes she did." Jade and I were working out a plan to gradually leave when one evening she asked me if I remembered her boss Maggie, whom I had met at the last 2 Christmas parties she had attended. To be honest, it would have been difficult to forget Maggie. She was about my age, with shoulder-length brown hair, bright green eyes, and large, full breasts that were obviously the first thing you noticed about her when she walked into a room. I figured her very large breasts balanced out the extra 20 pounds she was carrying. I also remembered that she was not just smart, although she was not quite at Jade's level. But then again, few people were. "What would you think about giving Maggie a chance?" Jade asked. "I mean, if we can't stay together for long, I think you two would be perfect for each other. She's smart, pretty, the best boss I've ever had. Hell, I wouldn't let her near you if we were thinking about a long-term relationship." "Do you think we had a chance? She didn't seem too keen on getting to know me at the Christmas parties." "That's because I threatened that bitch to stay away from you. Sometimes you just can't be subtle with some people," she said. Like me, Maggie had been married once before. Her husband, with whom she had been married for 16 years, decided he wanted to marry a younger woman, so they divorced about 4 years ago. I called Maggie and made a date for the following Saturday evening at a Greek restaurant. I know I smiled broadly when she opened the door on Saturday evening, wearing a tight-fitting green sweater with a plunging neckline. "Yeah, Jade said you'd like this top," she said cheerfully. "I have a feeling my girlfriend really knows you." It was the most surreal date I'd ever been on. I think Jade had told us everything about each other because it felt like we'd known each other forever. I also remembered everything I'd learned from Jade, which meant I went into the date aggressive, ready to get my way. Maggie, of course, did her job, and by the end of the date, I did hers too. I like a man who's a gentleman, but still isn't afraid to take care of business," she mumbled between kisses at her front door. I learned that Maggie really liked kissing. "Was she wearing a green sweater?" Jade asked when she called to find out how our date went. She chuckled mysteriously but said nothing more. I put it off for the future. On our 3rd date, Maggie wore a knee-length sundress. I tried to be inconspicuous, watching her breathe, but judging by her soft smile, I was not as inconspicuous as I thought. "Since I'm your girlfriend, I can look however you want me to," she said as we ate. "Jade told me you like big breasts. What a coincidence, huh?" That night we had sex for the first time. I wanted to invite her back to my place, but she insisted we go to hers. A woman likes to be loved where she feels most comfortable, and for me, that's my own bed. "We can try yours next week," she suggested softly. Who was I to argue? Maggie wasn't a child anymore, but when I undressed her, she still seemed like a sex toy to me. We made love hard and fast for about 20 minutes, and her final ecstasy at that moment sent me into raptures. We lay there entwined, catching our breath, for several minutes, before either of us spoke. "Oh my God, how am I going to repay Jade for this?" she asked quietly. "It's one thing to borrow a pair of shoes. This is a whole other level of repayment." A year and a half later, Jade was Maggie's maid of honor at our wedding. Maggie made the same impression on both of my children as Jade had. Kate couldn't believe that I had dated 2 sexy women in a row and that I was actually going to marry the second one. Obviously, the fact that Thor had attacked Tracy made her think in a way that my threats never had, even though I would never have hit my ex-wife. According to Kate, after the incident and the dental surgery that followed, she had hardly dated anyone and had told my children several times that she missed the life we had before. "Wow, Mom. Why didn't you think of that when you had your slut attack?" Kate replied. "It seems like you ignored everything you and Dad taught me and Brian." Maggie had a son, and in addition to our 3 children, we now had 5 official grandchildren. We were also the unofficial grandparents to Jade's 2 children, and we looked after Jade whenever she and her husband Chaz needed to spend an evening out. After all, Maggie owed her a lot, as she always said. I just smiled. Tracy finally found another man after dating what seemed like half the male population of our town. According to Kate, every healthy man over 30 seemed to want to date her, but no one seemed to want to stick around for long. Kate said she constantly reminded her mother to use protection so she wouldn't get pregnant or catch an STD. "Don't embarrass me, Mom," Kate would say, constantly reminding her. I think the rejection was fair game. I assumed that Tracy would remarry sooner or later, but I must admit I was surprised when I saw her choice. I thought it would be one of the big guys she seemed to prefer, but it turned out to be a skinny, short guy with a pale complexion. Of course, if he made her happy. After the divorce, I rarely spoke to my ex-wife, and at family events such as our children's weddings and Christmas, I was almost rude. Eventually, Tracy got the hint and started to stay away from me. Epilogue. I received a message from the local police about 2 years after Maggie and I got married. Apparently, Tracy's ex-lover had stumbled across a shovel or something one night. Of course, they wanted to know where I had been the night before. I thought I was going to get a good beating when I told them I had been home alone and no one could vouch for me because Maggie was out with Jade. The 2 cops just shrugged, muttered a thank you, and said they had to move on. "The dumb bastard obviously has a hobby of cuckolding married guys," one of the cops explained. "You're the 4th on our list of a dozen. This isn't for the record, but we won't cry if one of you guys comes clean. The stupid bastard got what he deserved, if you want my opinion." Who am I to argue?